Hashtag no music, no intro. Another episode of hashtag Saints for the podcast coming at you. And I'm floored right now, Ryan. I'm floored. We have by far our biggest guest that's joined us on the Saints Twitter podcast. No disrespect to Delvin Bro. Delvin Bro was up there too. But Super Bowl winning champion, former Saints legend, wide receiver, Lance Moore, number 16 on the hashtag Saints Twitter podcast. Just first and foremost, just thanks for coming on and doing the pod with us, man. It's really appreciated.
No problem, man. I think it's about time that I jump on some of these Saints podcasts and get to talking about what's going on, the state of the Saints, injuries, coaching, etc. And you guys happen to be the first one that I selected this year. And shoot, man, let's get to it.
First one picked. So out the gate, let's just start out the gate. You hit on coaching, and something that Ryan and I have talked about kind of throughout the season as the season's progressed is, as just general fans, and we're not seeing it correctly, but it just seems like maybe there's inconsistencies with the team in terms of coaching, whether it be just bad execution, number of penalties, things that's just hurting the team and keeping them from being competitive and just hurting themselves. Where does that stem from? Is that it's a player execution thing? Is it coaching and details? Where does that stem from?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. But we'd be all silly if we just figured Sean Payton was going to step down and whoever came in was going to be as good or better than Sean. I mean, Sean is one of the best in the game. The success that he had, obviously, especially over the last several years, speaks for itself. So when he steps away, you've got to figure out a way to establish a new culture. And I don't think it's a totally new culture, right? Because there's a bunch of coaches that were, held on to after Sean left, obviously DA being the main one, becoming the head coach. But this is his team now. This isn't Sean's team. He's trying to establish his style of coaching. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. I mean, it's not a situation where a new guy can come in and you're just going to build off of the success of the last guy. I don't think that's necessarily the case most of the time. But again, it's execution a lot. It's attention to detail. It's discipline or lack thereof. All things that can be corrected. I think it's unfair to DA to expect Sean Payton from him. I think he's doing a really good job. And, one thing that we've had to deal with that maybe not so many other teams. I mean, there's a few other banged up teams, but we are one of the most banged up teams in the National Football League. Oh, yeah. So once you start having to replace guys with backups and move guys from familiar positions to positions that maybe they're not as familiar with, I think that's when the mistakes start to pile up. I think that's when the undisciplined play starts to pile up. And I think a lot of the bad things that have happened to us are self-inflicted. Obviously, the penalties being first and foremost, but the turnovers, man. I mean, that is just it's hard to play well enough to win games as it is. But when you're giving the other team the football as often as we are, and we're not taking it away as much as we need to be, it's really hard to win those games, man. I mean, it's just, you talk about shooting yourself in the foot, and we've been doing a lot of that this season. But again, we're one game back in the division. So it's not all terrible news at this point. And like I said, it's things that we can't get corrected.
Right. And look, you talked about culture. And you've been there since the beginning. You were there, when Sean Payton took over in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina, Millsaps, the legendary Millsaps training camp, installing the toughness of the team and all that stuff. And, you were there for the Super Bowl, the years after. So you saw the kind of ebbs and flows that come with playing in the NFL year after year, all the different challenges and all of those things, and how Sean Payton dealt with it. And, come this year, the Saints are in a different position because their coach left. It's not like he got fired after, a 2-12 season, 2-14 season or whatever. So he left, and I guess their position was, okay, let's not just blow this thing up. It's not like it wasn't working. Let's maintain the culture that, Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis and everybody built. and just bringing DA, who's been a part of that culture for a long time, bringing him and see if he can maintain it. But you bring up a great point. It's like, maybe it's not about maintaining, it's about him creating his own culture, the DA culture, whatever that is. I don't know. And I just wonder if he's if he's just learning on the job of how to do that, how to instill that in the players and not just the players, but the assistant coaches and staff and everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is no easy way to do it, and like you said, it's not like this was a situation where the coach got fired and the roster stinks, right? I mean, we were a 9-8 football team, and we played with the tight end at quarterback most of last season. So to say that the expectations were rightfully put on this team, I think that's accurate. I mean, you have most of your guys back. We signed some new guys. We drafted Olave and a couple other guys. Jameis Winston was coming back healthy. So yeah, I mean, this is a roster that has expectations on it for good reason. But I totally agree that DA is doing the best job that he can to instill his culture, right? You build upon the success of the culture that was laid down before you, but you also have to sprinkle in your little wrinkle of things or ways or habits that you'd like to create within the team. And I don't think we're losing games because we have a bad culture. I think we're losing games because we haven't executed up to par. I think we haven't made enough plays when they're there to be made. I think we've been making silly mistakes, especially the fumbles, right? It's all the guys know how to hold on to the football. It's maybe something that needs to get drilled a little bit more in practice. Maybe we're a little too nonchalant with the football. That's what it's looked like for me. It hasn't been a situation where there's been guys carrying the rock and getting smashed and the ball's flying out. It's okay, this guy's got the ball, somebody punches it out or rips it out. And that's not a common theme for this football team, or it hasn't been in the past, and it has been early in this season. But I think that's something that can get corrected. I think the interceptions kind of go along with the aggressiveness that we've kind of been taking as far as throwing the football. I think that the decision-making part with Jameis was the biggest question mark that everybody had about him. Obviously, everybody knows he's talented and can get the ball down the field, but can he make the right decisions? He showed that he's capable last year. He just hasn't been able to kind of get in that rhythm this year. And that's kind of what scares me a little bit about him coming back off of injury, whenever that is. I don't know when that's going to be. I get the same amount of information that everybody else gets. I look at the injury report the same way everybody else does. So I'm not speaking to the coaches about who's going to get starts and who's not going to be playing and all those things. So I just hope he comes back with a refreshed and renewed mind frame and ready to kind of take what the defense gives him. And that's not to say to be gun shy. I think that's kind of why he was successful last season. If there's something there that's open, take it and allow your playmakers to make plays for you. You don't have to force things. We've got skill around him, guys that can make plays with the football in their hands. So, I'm looking forward to this game this weekend, and I think it's a great opportunity for us, regardless of who's injured, to step up and to finally get to 500 and put 2 wins together and continue some good football.
It's a huge game, as you allude to, because the team that wins get to 500 and the team that doesn't win, they're 2-4. And that's like, as a team, obviously that's like not a good place to be in, because there's a lot of things of questions that come out in terms of making the playoffs when the team starts 2-4. But speaking, you kind of brought up the Jameis point, and I find it you'd be the most perfect person to ask is, as a receiver, what, and obviously you play with Drew, but like, what quarterback would you prefer? Would you prefer the Jameis Winston type that's more aggressive downfield, or alternatively, you kind of have someone like Andy Dalton that gets the ball out on time, takes what the defense gives them, may not, be super, super uber aggressive when he throws the ball? Like, what is your preference when you played as a wide receiver?
Well, my preference was Drew Brees. And that's not fair to Jameis or
Right.
Andy. But if I'm playing in the 2022 version of the Saints, I would prefer a healthy Jameis because he's got the most upside. And I think the coaches could do him a favor and kind of tailor their play calls to the things that he does best. And by that, I don't mean throwing the ball down the field every other play. I think giving him some quick and easy targets early on, or some easy throws, some quick throws, get the ball to the playmakers quickly and allow them to make yards after the catch. A few timing things, maybe not a ton of drop back passes where he's dropping back and having to read the defense and figure it out. Not to say that he can't do that he's not capable of that, but I think it's sometimes when he gets himself in trouble if he's back there holding the football a little bit too much. And one thing that we haven't seen from him too much this year that we saw a lot of from him early on last season was him using his legs. Like he's kind of looked uncomfortable to me at times back there and not taking off when last year he was doing it. And I don't know if it's a mental thing or if his knee is just not feeling good enough yet to start doing those things. But I think it would help. It would really help our offense out tremendously if he could just, I mean, shoot, man, if it's 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 8 and he drops back and everything seems to be covered, but everybody on defense is dropping back and there's a hole right there up the middle. He could just trot down there 9 yards, slide down and pick up a first down. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are doing that to us defensively. I mean, it'd be amazing if we could get a couple of those plays from him. And I think he just needs to get in rhythm. I mean, that's the thing. We've started out so slow in so many games. I think pretty much all of them that he's played in. You know, we just have not been able to move the football early and make first downs and sustain drives and just put plays together in bunches in a row and extend a drive to a score early on or a couple of possessions early on where we're getting scores. That's how a quarterback gets in a rhythm. If you're coming out, you're 3 and out, then the next drive, you're 3 and out, then the next drive, you get 1 first down, then you're punting. I mean, it's really, really hard for a quarterback to get in a rhythm. And I think it's kind of coupled with the run game. I think the run game can be Jameis or Andy's best friend. I mean, we've been running the football well. I mean, I think we're in the top 3rd in the league in rushing yards per game and rushing yards per attempt. And it really makes everybody's job easier if you can run the football. The guys up front aren't getting tired from having to pass protect every other play or every 2 out of every 3 plays, which I know they get so annoyed of. I know that the running backs are excited about being able to tote that thing and put pressure on the defense. And then in the passing game, I mean, it really helps the receivers to be able to get open a lot better if you can do play action, boots and nakeds off the run, or just dropping back every now and again because the defense is so worried about you running the football, they get out of position and coverage. So I think it all goes hand in hand. I think we need to rely a little bit more on the run, especially with Alvin being back and healthy. And it'll really make the play caller's job easy, the quarterback's job easier, the offensive line's job easier, and the playmaker's jobs easier. I mean, it really will. And I think that these guys are smart. I know that they're doing their jobs and researching the things that we're doing well versus the things that we aren't. And I really think we'll be better as the season goes along as far as the play calling goes. Because there's been times this season where I've really thought that we're really predictable on offense from time to time. And it's like, okay, here we go. We get the ball, first down, run. Second down, run, third down. We're in 3rd and long sometimes. It's obviously a pass. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Pete. I know Pete's doing the best that he can at this moment. But I think potentially throwing the football on first down could help us. And I think running the football more, which how does that work hand in hand? But I really think that the predictability that we've had a little bit has put us in tough positions from time to time, and playing the staying on schedule game. What do I mean by that? Staying ahead of the chains as opposed to being behind the chains. Staying in 3rd and shorts rather than 3rd and longs. That will make our job as an offense that much easier.
You brought up. I just want to just hit on the predictability thing because it's something that I texted to Ryan. Like, what was it Monday night? No, Sunday night football. Whichever it was Monday night football. It was the Chiefs game, and I was watching the Chiefs offense, and almost every play pre-snap, either Andy Reid or Eric Bieniemy is using motion to identify something. And it was man, zone, whatever. They're using motion almost every offensive play. And right now, like I believe like the Saints if you pull out like the advanced stats or like the lowest team and using motion pre-snap,
which is crazy.
Offensively. And again, we're not trying to throw shade at Pete, but I think you kind of hit it on the head in terms of just the predictability of like, can we spice it up? Like, can we use some motion or just something to help the offense, because it's just not happening right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's a philosophical thing. That was Sean Payton's bread and butter, right? Keep the defense off balance. He's going to change personnel groupings almost every play. There's going to be a shift or a motion or both on every couple of plays, and I don't think it's necessary to be able to diagnose what the defense is in. I think lining up in different formations, right? Having your receiver inside and your tight end outside, that's going to give you an indication of what the defense is doing. Your personnel groupings, if they're matching personnel groupings, as far as when guys come out of the huddle, who's in the game, who's not in the game, you can kind of figure out what guys are in. But at the end of the day, these guys are pros, right? So it's their job to study film. It's their job to know tendencies as far as what the defense is doing. And every now and again, you're going to get caught off guard. But I do agree. I think using the shifts and motions the way that Kansas City does can be beneficial. But again, we haven't been an offense that's been on too much rhythm recently. So it's kind of hard to get into those extra things if you're not into rhythm. And Kansas City is one of the hottest teams in the league right now. They're in a tremendous rhythm. They score a ton of points. They get a ton of yards, obviously. And so it's easier for them to be able to do that. Like I liked it. I liked it as a player doing that because it makes the defense move and react several times before the ball is even snapped. And as a skill player, it most of the time it makes your job easier. Okay, they're in zone, or okay, they're in man-to-man this time. This guy's following me as I'm going in motion. Now I know what I have to do on the snap. But every now and again, they're not in what you think they're going to be in, and you've got to react. So that to me is more so on the players than it is Pete, right? I mean, Pete might not be a guy that wants to do that very much. I don't know. I'm not sitting in those meetings. All I can go off of is the 2012 season when Pete was calling plays, and I was obviously in that offense. And so, we're talking 10 years ago. So if he's kind of changed his philosophy since then, I mean, I remember that year. I mean, we were throwing the ball down the field all the time. But you got to think we had number 9 pulling the trigger. So it's a totally different situation. It's a totally different team, clearly. And I still think that this team has time to kind of figure out their identity. And, I think they'll continue to improve.
Right. And I think, I think they're trying to build that offense. I think it takes time. You got to start building the foundation before you start adding all the trickery and all the little things that, that can make it spicy. So I think they'll get to that. We saw that this past week when they played the Seahawks. We saw them use some motion with Taysom. You get in the empty, and they'll run some motion, identify what the defense is doing, and he run our pass. He did that one pass, and it was interesting. Like we finally did see some offense this past week, and it was good. Like we saw some rhythm. There were some mistakes still. There was Alvin Kamara fumble. So there were some things that they still need to clean up. You didn't see as many penalties, and I think that right there is a good stepping stone. If they could clean up those penalties, stay on schedule, like you said, to where, it's third short, or sometimes you don't have a third down. You're getting those first downs. You're moving in chunks, you're picking up rhythm. That's the Saints offense we like to see, because we remember those days, man. You, Drew, Colston, Pierre Thomas, y'all out there. And the Sean Payton, y'all moving players in and off the sideline, and the defense is looking around like, can we get a breath, please? Damn.
Sweating.
So I think they're trying to build towards that, man. But I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts so far, on the wide receivers that they brought in this season? Starting with Chris Olave. Obviously, he's looking good so far. What are your thoughts on him, as a astute wide receiver you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that's talented, clearly, or else he wouldn't have been a first-round pick. We wouldn't have, traded up to grab him. He fills a specific role of need that we've had for the last several years, a guy that can stretch the field, a guy that can get open underneath, a guy that can do things after the catch. I think he's starting to get somewhat comfortable as an NFL player. And sometimes it takes time for young guys, but he's been making plays since week one. I've really been impressed with some of the plays that he's made, and you can tell that the quarterbacks are really confident in him being able to make the plays because they keep going to him time and time again. I mean, I really like what I see from him, and he's especially one of the guys that I wish that I was still around so that I could help and work with him. And not to say that he needs me, but I think he's somebody that could benefit from somebody like me being around to help him with the little intricacies of this Saints offense. And help to make his job even easier. I think he's going to be really, really good in the NFL. And shoot, man, I'm excited. I mean, look, I'm a Columbus guy. So I've always been an Ohio State fan, so it was cool for me to see that we drafted him, and I was excited. And I reached out to him, in the summertime a couple of times and talked ball and tell him if he needs anything in the city to let me know. And he's a San Diego kid, which that's where I live now. So hopefully this off season we'll be able to get together a little bit. Maybe when they're out here throwing, I'll stop by and hook up with the guys. But I think he's been really, really good but I still don't think he's, there yet. I'm not going to say that he's the guy, but he's shown this season early on that I think he's capable of being the guy. And then the Jarvis, shoot, man, we got to keep him on the field. I mean, that's it. That's what it's been to me. I mean, because he had a heck of an offseason. He had a great training camp. Obviously, we know what he did week one against Atlanta, over 100 yards and making probably the biggest play so far for us this season and that long catch to put us in the field goal range. So, we just got to get him healthy and shoot, man. Mike T, man, if we can keep him on the field, man, we have such a good group. It's really a war of attrition in the NFL. Like who can stay the healthiest the longest, whose guys can be on the field week in and week out. And you see the groups that are really good and deep are the ones that are really showing up and making plays. And the team that sticks out to me obviously is the team that I think leads the NFL in offense, and that's the Buffalo Bills. I mean, those guys are playing every week and they're making a ton of yards and they've got a good group. But I really think that we've got a group that can, when healthy, can contest with anybody. Just have to stay healthy and make the plays when they're there to be made.
And that kind of segues into Sunday being such a huge game against the Bengals and the storylines of all the LSU players coming back to New Orleans, coming back to the Superdome is such a huge thing. But at the end of the day, like these are two teams that desperately want to win. What are your just overall thoughts of this game? That's a huge game for the Saints.
Well, first and foremost, like I'm gonna put my former player hat on and say I don't care who's on the other team. Like it's a media thing to talk about all these LSU guys coming back to play in the Superdome. The players don't care. They don't care. They don't care what school you went to. They don't care who won a national championship in the Superdome because you know what? That doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with this game on this Sunday. They had success in the Superdome before. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to play well this time. And it doesn't mean that they will play poorly this time, right? It's two or three guys from a team that are now on a team in the NFL, right? It's the Saints against the Bengals. So I've heard the LSU talk all week, and it's kind of been driving me crazy because who cares, right? I mean, I understand it's New Orleans, it's Louisiana, LSU is the state football or is the state college in Louisiana, but this has nothing to do with the LSU Tigers. This has everything to do with the New Orleans Saints versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think that they're a team clearly who started slow coming off of the Super Bowl last year, and some people will call it Super Bowl hangover. I don't know if it's exactly that. But early on in the season, we noticed that the Bengals had trouble protecting Joe. And that was kind of their Achilles heel last year, that they just could not keep this guy clean. But the last couple of weeks, they've kind of righted the ship a little bit. I believe they've only given up 3 sacks in the last 2 games, which how they started out, I think they had 9 sacks in the first game and 8 in the second game or something like that. So they've kind of figured out how to help him help keep him clean, whether that's getting the ball out early, whether that's running the football a little bit more, using the play action a little bit more. It's whatever they've been doing, it's been working the last several weeks. And that's kind of funny because our pass rush coincidentally has started to come alive the last couple of weeks. So I think that's going to probably be one of my key matchups in this football game. Our defensive line going up against their offensive line, both units playing better as the season goes on. And I mean, shoot, for us, I think we got to get after him. I mean, we've got to have one of those 5, 6, 7 sack games. Get after him. We've got to hit him, and hopefully we're able to get enough pressure on him to turn him over. He's shown that he's capable or willing to turn the ball over a little bit, and I think we are so due. We are so due for a big time turnover performance for our defense.
Please.
I mean, we haven't had one of those all season. And honestly, like if we've got a couple guys that are banged up and not playing on the back end, then so be it. But I still think the guys that will be playing have the ability to hopefully pick off some balls from the defense getting some pressures, or maybe even tip balls. I mean, that's something that we haven't seen very much of this season either. So a big time challenge. I'm sure DA is going to challenge both our offensive and defensive lines in this game, because they can have a major impact in how this football game goes.
No, I agree. It's such a huge game and such a big challenge. Because I mean, look, Bengals got a nice defense. Lots of former Saints players over there. Von Bell, seems like he's getting a pick every game.
Man.
You got Trey Hendrickson. He's been a monster off the edge. The Saints, Saints offense has been kind of a mirror image, because Jameis was sacked like 10 times in the first 2 games or whatever. And then I think Dalton has been sacked like 3 times in the last 2 games. So, obviously, they're getting the ball out quick and stuff like that has helped pass protection. So I think, that's obviously going to big key on the flip side is to protect Andy Dalton or Taysom Hill. Do you think that Hill, like the Taysom Hill game that he just had, do you think that's something they want to continue to do, or was it just kind of hey, they saw something in the Seahawks defense that they could take advantage of, so we're going to, utilize Hill?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not watching a ton of film on our opponents, so I can't tell you that they looked at Seattle and said, "Hey, man, we can really run Taysom on these guys." I can put my guessing hat on and say, this offense needs a spark. What do we need to do to give this offense a spark? And Taysom, to me, has been probably the most exciting player on offense this season. I mean, obviously, Chris Olave has made a lot of plays, but think back to the Atlanta game. I mean, what do we do if Taysom Hill doesn't have the game that he has against Atlanta?
Don't win. They don't win.
He is playing the role that he was always supposed to play in this offense, right? Yes. The guy that can come in on 3rd and 4th and short, 2nd and short even. And you know what? The thing that's most exciting to me about what they did last week is the fact that he threw the football.
Yes.
And it didn't have to be 5 or more throws. It's that one throw,
that's all you need,
touchdown to Troutman,
that's
going to have defense thinking, hey, man, he's maybe not running this football every single time. But you know what else? When the defenses know he's running the football, most of the time it doesn't matter. Just because having a quarterback in basically as your running back adds an extra guy to be able to protect up front. And so what happens with that is you have to bring another guy down into the box as a defense, which in turn leaves one guy out of coverage. So instead of having an extra guy deep on defense, they've got a safety down in the box to prevent big plays in the run game. That allows Taysom to be able to drop back and throw the football. And I think, shoot, man, I'm not going to tell you that we're going to throw it more with Taysom this week, but the threat of him throwing the football could be potentially major in this game. But if they want to just put him in every now and again and run it downhill, I'm all for it, man, because nobody's proven that they can stop it. Every now and again, somebody will get a tackle for loss in the backfield. I'm thinking back to the Tampa Bay game. I think we had a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2, and they stuffed us. But other than that, man, I mean, it's downhill with him. He's getting yards. He's falling forward and usually getting those first downs or touchdowns. And I think we'll see more of it. I don't think we'll go back to the days where Taysom is playing 4 or 5 plays total on offense. I think he's too big of a weapon. He's got to be out there.
Mm.
I want to get back to the defense going against the Bengals, because I think my biggest concern, just as a fan, is obviously we don't know the injury status of Marshawn with the abdominal injury, but we kind of saw when he went out against the Seahawks that DA went to using a lot of zone coverages on defense, and that led to some coverage bust. How do you, I guess, what can the defense do to be more on the same page to prevent those busts? Because I just have like this premonition of like Jamar Chase just like running by someone on a bust, and it just keeps flashing in my mind. Like Marcus May hopefully potentially playing will help with that, but what are some things, obviously getting to Joe Burrow would help with that can help offset them if they play a lot of zone, when they typically potentially want to play more man?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a personnel thing, right? So if some of your top guys are not out there, your kind of game plan goes out the window a little bit. You can't expect, a guy that's not playing too much man to man, or a special teams guy. I looked at this past game, and just from a total fans perspective, I look back at safety, and we had Justin Evans and TJ Gray playing safety.
Yeah.
Right. And that's no slight against those guys, but those are not the guys that we signed to play safety on this team. Yeah. Right. Like TJ Gray is one of the best special teams players in the National Football League. Yep. But that's his bread and butter. Like he's not a guy that's getting a ton of game reps at strong or free safety. Justin Evans was a slot nickel guy at the beginning of the season, but because of injuries, PJ Williams is out, Marcus May is out. Marshawn Lattimore got hurt. They had to move guys around. I mean, it's tough to call your defense and do the things that you want to do if your top guys aren't out there. And so, sure, call it coverage bust, but I don't, just watching the film, I don't think it was as much coverage bust as it was guys in the back end of the secondary getting beat because they're not used to being back there.
Right.
Tyler Lockett, especially running the double move on the second touchdown. I mean, I think we're playing 2-man. So Adebo is playing underneath him, which is where he's supposed to be. Right. And, TJ Gray and Justin Evans are supposed to be the top of the coverage, right? Don't let anybody get behind you. Right. Be the deepest of the deepest. Make that quarterback put that ball in the perfect spot. What do I mean by that? The perfect spot being over the underneath coverage, which is Adebo, and under the deep coverage, which would have been those safeties. So that it's a lot harder to throw that ball than it is a ball that's going over top of everybody's head. So right. It's sure, if some of my top corners are out of the game, I'm probably going to play more zone coverage just because that's what you have to do. It's unfair to the guys that aren't the better corners and say, hey, you match up with Lockett, you match up with DK Metcalf, and we're just going to see what happens. I mean, that's really that's not fair to those guys, and that's not fair to our team. So, making those kind of midstream adjustments in the game. Thank goodness our pass rush woke up, in the latter part of that game and helped those guys out, and just made enough plays to win.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be kind of another shootout, kind of like the Seattle game where, not exactly passing the ball, but just a lot of plays are going to be happening. I think, with the injuries on defense, especially if Marshawn can't go, I think you're going to see a lot of, big plays coming from the Bengals offense. But look, the Bengals offense hadn't been perfect all year either. They've been having their struggles. So it's just kind of I think it's kind of a get-right game for both teams where they just kind of want to just look good. Now, that's what I wanted the Saints to just look good out there and but really just win. Like, win is the most important thing. If they could just get this W, that'll be huge just moving forward because this is one of the tougher games on the schedule. But I wanted to ask you, being a former player now you're in the media. I see you on WDSU all the time and stuff like that. How has it been for you just watching the team from afar? Is it kind of weird? Because I say when you talk about the Saints, you say we when you talk about the Saints. So obviously you're a fan now. You're speaking from a fan's perspective. How has that been for you, from your perspective?
Well, look, it's always going to be we. right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't spend 9 years of my career in one spot to just be an outsider once I was done. Obviously, my career didn't end with the Saints. I went on and played for other teams, and I always knew that I wanted to come back, right? So it is a we thing for me.
Did you
It's a
sign that? Did you sign that contract with the Falcons? I can't remember. It was like a 1 day.
yeah. Yeah, I did. I did. Look, I tried several times during that offseason to get back with the Saints. And even before I flew to Atlanta, I had my agent reach out to Mickey and say, "Hey, he's getting ready to fly to Atlanta. Are you sure there's not anything we can do?" And Mickey was like, "Hey, man, we're going younger. We just don't have any room for him. There's not a spot for him here." So at that point, it basically, in my mind, that was a blessing. Go ahead and sign with the
Yeah,
Falcons.
yeah,
So
no doubt.
I still wanted to play football, and the Falcons were willing to have me on their team. So that's why I did it. I didn't sign
Oh
with the
yeah,
Falcons so I could go and retire a couple of days later like that. I had no intentions of doing that. But
right.
really, being off, or I should say, away from a team that entire offseason. So right, the 2015 season ended the first week. Of the 2016 year. So January 2016, I was with the Lions. So obviously we didn't make the playoffs. So from January till August, basically, I wasn't on a team. So I was training by myself. I had to find a quarterback to throw to me. And I still wanted to play, but I was just away from football, which meant spending more time with my family.
Yeah,
My oldest, who's now 7, was getting ready to turn 1 in that August. So being with my family, being away from football really, allowed me to start thinking about, geez, this isn't that bad.
yeah.
And so going to Atlanta, it was awkward. I'm not gonna lie about that. I even just getting the phone call from my agent, "Hey man, the Falcons want to work you out." I was like, "Oh man, any team but Atlanta." Like that was really what I was thinking, and that's what I told him. I was like, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go to the workout." And he's like, "Huh?" He's like, "They," and I said, "I don't want to go to the workout unless they're planning on signing me." And he was like, "Well, they want to sign you." And my wife was like, "Okay, would you rather retire and be done with football, or would you rather go to Atlanta and play and keep getting paid?" And I was like, "You're right. I'm gonna go ahead and get this check."
Get this money.
So, once I got there, man, it just didn't feel right, honestly. Like I just landing in Atlanta, being picked up by Falcons personnel, putting on the gear for my workout, being in Flowery Branch in the their facility. It just did not feel right, and it was definitely an internal thing with me where it's like, man, my heart is really not here. And it's funny because the week before I worked out for the Chargers and I was all about it. Like, oh man, I'm
Yeah.
building a home in San Diego.
San
This is
Diego,
gonna
of
be
course.
perfect. I'm really about to be playing in the city where I'm living long term. Like for me, that was like, man, this is gonna be great. And I honestly do think had it been San Diego who signed me, I would have kept playing football and I would have
Yeah,
played, at least a couple more years because my heart would have still been in it. But just knowing that it was Atlanta, knowing the history with the Saints and the Falcons, and really just not liking the Falcons ever, it didn't feel right. And then I get there, somebody already had number 16. They didn't have the proper helmet. Like all these things were like piling up. Then it's like I'm sitting in these meetings. I'm 10 days late to training camp, and I'm trying to like crash course this offense that for me just seems so unfamiliar and strange. Now, obviously, there was similar concepts because everybody runs a lot of the similar things, but the verbiage and some of the things that they were doing, I just couldn't. Like I just was like, man, this is like making my head spin because it was really like a crash course. Like they were like, "You're here now, like you're in." Like that first day in practice, I was in the huddle with the ones, and I had
wow.
no idea what the heck I was
Oh
doing. Raheem
wow.
Morris was the receiver coach back then, and he was literally in the huddle with us. He's like, "All right, you go to the left, you go to the left. This is what you got." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And so, not to say that I wasn't ready to be in the mix like that, but I know that it would have taken me several days to kind of get my football brain back on and physically
Yeah,
be ready to be back in between the white lines. And I don't know, man. Playing for the arch rival in my mind was enough for me to kind of be like, maybe I don't want to be playing football. And moving on to what was next was right for me in that moment.
yeah.
He pulled the anti-Tom Brady. He spent more time with his family. He said, "Man, this is good for me." Tom said, "Nah, get me away, get me away, get me away." Um, I have two more for you. The first one I have is, since you obviously watched the All 22, you break it down. what differences potentially do you see in the Saints offense now with Pete Carmichael calling plays, whether it's um, formations or potentially how he's trying to attack defenses, that is different from how Sean called plays, or is the offense from someone who's been in it still mostly just the same from what you've seen?
Well, I don't think it's the same because you have a different guy calling the plays, right? And then you've obviously got a different guy pulling the trigger than most of last year, and then most of Sean's history. So you got to kind of couple those things together. I think one thing that's been glaring to me, and I've been calling for it all season, and we got it last week, and Alvin had like a 50-some yard reception, is the screen game. We've had zero screen game this year, and I think, shoot, man. I mean, who wouldn't want to get the ball to Alvin and Mark and some of these receivers in space? I mean, it makes everybody else's job easier if you can get chunk plays on easy throws like that. So that's been one thing that's kind of stood out to me. That's kind of weird. But hopefully, last week we'll build from that and keep doing some of those things. And also the quick game. I mean, we have not had too much of the 3-step drops, the bubble screens, the tunnel screens, some of these easy throws. I mean, I can't even tell you how many slants we've run this season. I'm not a guy that's a huge fan of slants. They used to get on my nerves, but I mean, shoot, they're really easy throws for the quarterbacks. And I feel like that's something that we've got to be able to do. Catching the ball in short spots and turning those short catches into long gains. You see a lot of teams doing it, and I get jealous from time to time when I see these guys, Devontae Adams, all the receivers for the Packers, Stephon Diggs. I mean, these guys are catching balls at 2, 3, 4, 5 yards down the field and turning them into 12, 15, 18 or longer. I mean, that's something that we've got guys that got the ability to do that. Why are we not taking advantage of that? So, the short, quick passing game coupled with the screen game. And I think we've got to run the ball more, not necessarily run the ball when everybody thinks we're going to run it, but run the ball more because we've got the group that's capable of really controlling the line of scrimmage and dominating the football games.
You say you had one more, Adam?
Yeah. Everyone would be appalled if I didn't ask this question. Appalled, but I have to ask it. 2009 Saints team, 2011 Saints team.
Yep.
Which one are you picking?
2011.
Oh man.
Yeah. And you know what? It still kind of keeps me up at night. Like, how did that team not win a Super Bowl? It's like it really. I mean, obviously, San Francisco showed up and made more plays than us on that day.
I was there.
I still think that we're a better team than they were. They were better on that day, and I don't think the 2011 team like smokes the 2009 team, but I do think that we're the most talented team, probably that Sean Payton ever had, and it's unfortunate that we didn't win the bowl. I mean, just speaking from offense alone, man, we were record breaking. We were record breaking, and there was really no weakness. You're talking prime Drew Brees. You're talking weapons out of the what offensively, and offensive line that had
Carl Niggs,
four Pro Bowlers.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, we had tight ends, clearly, Jimmy Graham, David Thomas. I mean, defense was I don't think that defense was as good as our recent defenses, but I know one thing that defense did. They took that ball away.
Sure did.
They found a way to get takeaways and to give us short fields or to score touchdowns themselves. And then couple that with what Sproles was able to do in the return game. I mean, we that was a special team, man, and it's sad that we weren't able to do what we all thought that we could do, or we all thought that we would do in that season. But sometimes that's just how it goes, man. You don't play your best in any game in the NFL, and you can get beat, and especially comes when you start playing in the playoffs when every team is really good.
Man, that you spoke for the fans for that one, because that's one team that everybody still to this day, man. We talk about that one. But on a lighter note, what was your favorite celebration? Because I missed the Lansmore celebrations, man. The touchdown celebrations, the Key and Peele, so many that you had. What was your favorite one that you remember? And you was just like, I can't believe I did that shit.
Well, look. First, look, we haven't been able to see a lot of that this year because we haven't been winning in a lot of games this year. So the guys really haven't had the chance to show out, like like they could, I'm sure. And man, I mean, it's got to be the Key and Peele. I mean, that one was classic. I always on Twitter, I always say I was the first one that did it. Like, there's a lot of guys.
On the show? Did you get on this show?
Yeah, I did. So they saw that I did it. A couple of days later, Jordan Peele was wearing like a T-shirt of me with my hands on my head, and Kenny Stills pointing at me counting. So I was like, "Oh man, this is great." And so one of my high school buddies was friends with one of the executive producers on the show. We kind of connected the dots. They said, "Hey man, we'd love to have Lance on the show." And so my buddy was like, "Hey, you want to be on the show?" I was like, "Yeah, what are you talking about?" Of course. Like, this is one of the greatest sketch comedy shows of all time. Like, yes, right. I'm gonna be on the show. And it was like the week leading up, and it was the off season of 2013. And they're like, "Hey, you're gonna be in this whatever sketch it is." And my buddy was like, "Hey man, does Lance have any lines in the sketch?" And the producer was like, "No, I don't think so." And he's like, "Is there any way that you can get him in a sketch with some lines like that? I think that would be cool, as opposed to him just basically being an extra." And so the executive producer ran it through the guys. The guys were like, "Yeah, heck yeah." And so he's like, "Hey man, you're gonna have lines." But I didn't get my lines until like the night before. So I'm cramming. I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, now how am I gonna act like I've been practicing these lines for weeks now when I literally just got them last night? Like, I'm not a pro actor. I've been in some low budget commercials, but I've never been in anything to this scale that's just as important as this is. So I basically stayed up till like 3:00 in the morning. Sure enough, I wake up. We're supposed to be on set at like 6. I get there, wipe the sleep out of my eyes. And they're like, "Hey, here's your trailer." I'm in my trailer with my buddy. They take me to hair and makeup, which, I really didn't need too much hair. They gave me a do-rag because they called me Urban Guy. Yeah. And they put a little makeup on my face and said, "Okay, we'll come get you when the time comes." And sure enough, by 9 a.m., somebody knocks on my trailer door and they're like, "All right, we're ready to go to set." And so I'm like, "All right, here we go." And so we get on this big van, which was, where we were recording most of the sketch. And I think it was Jordan that he said, "Hey, come on, everybody get off. Let's go through a read real quick." And at this point, I'm like, "Oh shoot. Like, this isn't the real thing, but this is the first time that they're gonna basically see and hear me act." Right. So we get off the bus, or we get off the van, and we get in a little circle, and all of us that have speaking lines, I think it was 5 of us, and we're sitting there, and the producer's like, "Okay, we're going to go through this 1 or 2 times, and then we're going to get on, and then we're going to just go through it a bunch of times. We're going to shoot, however many takes it takes to get what we think is enough." And so I don't remember which guy started, but I just remember holding my script and my hands like shaking, because this is just so familiar, and there's a whole lot of pressure, man. You talk about a guy that's used to playing football in front of millions of people on television and 70, 80,000 people in person, and don't blink. Like, it's normal. Like, this is what I do. I catch footballs. I turn up in front of the crowd. Like, it's nothing to me. But reading my lines in front of Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key was like the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my life. And so we're going through, and I get to my first line, and I read my first line, and Jordan Peele goes, "Stop." And at this point, I'm like, "Oh no, what is he about to say?" And he goes, "Thank God Lance Moore can act." And everybody around was like, yes, like, he's so good. And I didn't really say anything. I looked at him just kind of shaking my head, but internally I was like doing jumping jacks, backflip. I was celebrating. I was like, yes, like, he's accepted me. Like, I'm not gonna be the guy that just got the spot because he's an athlete. I got the spot because I'm an athlete and did a celebration, but I can also add a little something to this sketch. So yeah, so from that point on, I had confidence, and we went through the day, and everything was great, and it was awesome. And Malcolm Jamal Warner was there. I mean, like this was like a super cool day that I'll remember forever. Obviously I got my acting credits. I still get checks for
residuals,
the episodes that are clearly still being watched and streamed from people all over the world, and just an experience, man, that I will cherish for the rest of my life. And really, I should have, or I need to kind of parlay that into some more spots. I mean, Jordan has been doing some awesome work as far as producing films. And I would love to be in anything, even if it was an extra in a movie. Like I would love to do that, man, because that's like, it's really cool to see yourself do something that you're not really accustomed to. So kind of breaking out of your comfort zone and doing something different, and where people can say, hey man, I saw you doing X, Y, and Z, like something that you're not used to doing. It really means a lot. And it was fun. It really was fun. And the guys were unbelievably humble and funny. I mean, I tell you, like, these guys are clearly great at what they do, but to see it like up close and personal, we would take a break in the van, and the two of them would go through, like, this is what they did. They would shoot like the entire season in like a 2-week span. So you're talking 10 days of work. They shoot
that's
120
crazy.
sketches or whatever it was. And so they would do 4 or 5 or 6 sketches in a day. So they would just go and say, hey, let's do whatever the next sketch is going to, let's run through that a couple times. And we would just be in the van silent, and they would go through it. And by the end of it, we would all just be cracking up laughing. And they were so on point with, hey, this doesn't really sound the way I want it. Let's change it to this. Like, because, they're executive producing the show as well. So they can make those type of decisions on the fly. Hey, this is going to sound better than this. And they would do it, and it would be perfect. And like, it blew my mind that they were just that good. And shoot, man, just awesome dudes to be around. And like I said, that's something that I'll take with me forever.
Hell yeah, man. That's crazy.
That's an incredible experience. Now with your foray into media, how's that been for you? Like, and is it something that you're enjoying, kind of having like that second career post football?
Yeah, I mean, it is. Look, it's a fun job what I do with WDSU, being a local analyst and really focusing and diving into our team, right? The Saints. Yeah. I started out with SiriusXM NFL Radio back in 2017, and doing the radio thing is cool. I think that the media thing comes somewhat natural to me. I've been interviewed a ton of times throughout my career, and I've always felt like I could have been a go-to guy for a lot of reporters and journalists, and it was kind of a natural transition, I guess you could say. I can't sit here and tell you that this is something that is like the end goal for me. If a bigger opportunity showed up, I can't tell you that I would turn it down. But I'm working on several other things. And like I said, this is a fun thing. Like this WDSU is fun to stay connected in the city, to stay connected with the team, and stay involved with the guys that I know so much about, is really, really fun. And, I don't take this opportunity for granted at all.
No question, man.
You're doing great. As someone who lives 2 hours away from San Diego, I don't know if you and the family have been to Puesto yet, but if you have not been to Puesto, please go check it out. Absolutely, some of the best tacos you'll ever have. Period.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
There's like 4 in San Diego, so go check out a Puesto in like La Jolla somewhere. You and the family will enjoy it. And just truly thank you for coming on. This was amazing, excellent. Last minute prediction for the game. You have the Saints winning. You have a score.
I haven't really thought that far ahead. I do think that we are going to win this game. I think this is one of those games that's like, nobody's going to pick us. We're the underdogs.
Yes, no one's going to pick
nobody's going to think that, we're going to be able to play well enough to win this game. And I think we're due, man. Like, we have not played a complete game. Obviously, we have not played a game where all three phases have complemented one another.
Mhm.
And I'm expecting that this week. But expectations are really, they don't get the job done. The guys go out and get the job done. So I know that they're going to be preparing their butts off. I know that they're going to have a game plan that's going to be the best opportunity for these guys to make plays this weekend. And hopefully we make more plays than they do, because we know that they're a talented football team. They wouldn't have made it to the Super Bowl last year if they didn't have some guys.
Absolutely. So I'm
Amazing.
sure anyone who listens to this is already following Lance on Twitter. But if not, you can follow Lance on Twitter at LanceMoore16. Check out his local coverage of the Saints at WDSU6. Thank you so much for coming on, man. We really, really appreciate it. And appreciate your time and just talking football with us and just breaking down the team. Couldn't ask for a better guest. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
No doubt, man. Thank you guys for having me. And who dat?
Who dat?
Sir, who that?
With that, we out.